The first type of stratified epithelium we'll be looking at is keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. That seems like a lot, so let's break the term apart. Stratified tells us that we have multiple cell layers. Squamous means that the cells in the uppermost layers are flat. Keratinized means that the cells in the upper layers of the epithelium are filled with a protein called keratin. Keratin makes the cells waterproof and also causes them to die. In order to see a keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, we need to look at a skin slide. The skin slide that we have on the screen currently is showing thick skin because it's really easy to see the keratinized stratified squamous on a thick skin sample. When we look at this skin slide, we can see the two layers of the skin. The outermost layer, which is shown in this lovely purple color here, is the epidermis. That's going to contain our epithelium. And then the deeper layer, which is this nice pink, is the dermis. We're going to come back and visit the dermis a little bit later. So let's zoom in and focus on our epidermis so we can see this keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. As we zoom in, what we notice is that we have multiple layers of cells. The cells down at the bottom are somewhat cube-shaped, but then as we work our way up, we notice those cells starting to flatten out. That's why we call this a stratified squamous epithelium, because the cells at the top are flat. We also notice that this upper layer here, all of the cells have died. We essentially can't see their nuclei. They have been keratinized. Now, the reason why this is important, this outer keratinization helps the skin become waterproof. So when we look at a keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, it provides a very thick waterproof barrier. That's why we have this epithelium on the outside of the body. It locks moisture in and also prevents bacteria and viruses and other pathogens from penetrating into the body. Our next type of epithelium is called non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Let's break the term down so we get a better idea of what we're looking at. Stratified tells us that there are multiple layers of cells. Squamous tells us that those cells in the uppermost layers are flat, and non-keratinized means that we don't have an outer layer of dead cells full of keratin. Let's take a look at this trachea and esophagus slide. You should already be familiar with this slide from our earlier discussion of pseudostratified columnar epithelium. The organ at the top of the slide is the trachea, which is where we find that pseudostratified columnar epithelium, and the bottom organ is the esophagus. In order to see our non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, we're going to be looking inside the esophagus. So we're going to zoom in on this portion of the slide. Now, as we zoom in, we can see that kind of weirdly shaped white area. That's referred to as the lumen. So that's the inner passageway that travels through the esophagus. That's where food and liquid would be located. Now, as we zoom in, we can see that lining the lumen, we have our epithelium. Notice that this epithelium is multiple cell layers thick, and as the cells approach the surface of the epithelium, they flatten out. That's why we refer to this as a stratified squamous epithelium. Also notice how the living cells go all the way to the very top layer. There's no dead layer of cells at the top providing waterproofing, so this is why we refer to this as a non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Remember that the esophagus lies deep within the body. We don't have to worry about this organ drying out, so we don't have a need for keratinization. The skin is keratinized because it faces the external body environment. But any food that we eat still could potentially be covered with things like bacteria or viruses, so we want multiple cell layers to provide protection. So areas that are inside of the body but still relatively close to a body surface will have non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Places like the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, vagina, and anus. Our last type of stratified epithelium is called transitional epithelium. Transitional epithelium is stratified, meaning it has multiple different cell layers. We call it transitional because we transition between many different cell shapes. Some of the cells in transitional epithelium will appear flat, some might be cube-shaped, some are rounded, some may even be columnar. The slide we're currently looking at is a ureter, the tube that carries urine from the kidney down to the urinary bladder. We find transitional epithelium here in the ureter as well as in the urinary bladder. Its primary function is to be able to expand as urine flows through this tube. Let's go ahead and zoom in so that we can see the transitional epithelium a little bit better. So as we zoom in, notice the white space in the center. This is the inside of the ureter or ureter. That's where urine would be flowing through. So the lining that surrounds that lumen, which is shown here in purple, is going to be our transitional epithelium. Notice when you look at the transitional epithelium, there's multiple layers of cells, but there's not one overall cell shape. You can see individual cells may be flat or rounded or cube-shaped.